I sacrificed my independence to help my family, but they were plotting behind my back. What I found in those hidden cameras would send someone to prison for 15 years. At 32 years old, I thought I understood family loyalty. When my brother-in-law called me a burden, and my sister demanded I leave my childhood home, their perfect facade crumbled within days. What I discovered about greed and justice would reshape everything I believed about the people closest to us. Moving back in with my parents at 32 wasn't exactly my life plan, but sometimes circumstances demand we step up in ways we never imagined. When Dad suffered his stroke 11 months ago, the decision became crystal clear. Mom needed to maintain her job for the health insurance benefits, and someone had to be there during those crucial daylight hours. Working remotely as a software consultant made it possible, and honestly, being present for Dad's recovery felt like the most important project I'd ever undertaken. That particular evening, I'd ventured downstairs around 2 in the morning, parched and seeking nothing more than a glass of water. The house should have been wrapped in the peaceful silence that settles over a home where healing takes precedence over everything else. Instead, hushed voices drifted from our kitchen like smoke signals of trouble ahead. My sister Catherine and her husband Marcus were huddled together at our family table, their conversation painted in the kind of urgent whispers that immediately set your nerves on edge. Catherine rarely graced us with visits, perhaps once every month or so, making their presence at this ungodly hour particularly unsettling. I paused at the bottom of the staircase, water glass suspended in my grip, wrestling with whether to announce myself or retreat back upstairs. Something in their body language screamed conspiracy, and a cold dread began pooling in my stomach. The market conditions couldn't be more favorable, Marcus was saying, his voice carrying that smooth confidence that had always rubbed me the wrong way. We just need to present this as the optimal solution for everyone involved. Robert's the obstacle we need to navigate around. He's always been Dad's golden child, you know how they operate together. I stood there frozen, feeling like an intruder in my own home, watching my sister nod with a kind of calculated agreement that transported me back to our childhood. This was the same expression she'd worn when plotting how to convince our parents to bend rules they'd already established. The familiarity of it made my skin crawl. The following morning arrived with an artificially cheerful atmosphere. Mom was orchestrating her famous pancake breakfast, her time-tested method of injecting normalcy into our lives since Dad's medical crisis. When Catherine cleared her throat with theatrical precision, I braced myself for whatever performance was about to unfold. "We have some rather significant news to share," she announced, reaching for Marcus's hand with practiced tenderness. "We've made the decision to sell our house." Mom's spatula clattered against the stovetop. "Sell? But Catherine, you've always adored that place." Marcus stepped into the conversation with the seamless timing of a rehearsed presentation. "We've been reflecting deeply on family priorities lately, particularly given Dad's condition. The importance of being closer to the people who matter most has become undeniably clear." I studied Dad's face carefully. His speech remained challenging, but his eyes held the same sharp intelligence that had guided our family through decades of decisions. Something flickered there, confusion, perhaps concern, maybe even recognition that this conversation carried hidden currents. "We were thinking," Catherine continued, her voice dripping with honey-sweet manipulation, "we could temporarily move in here to provide additional support. Robert's room would be perfectly suited to our needs. After all, he can work from virtually anywhere, can't he?" The kitchen fell silent except for the angry sizzle of pancakes beginning to burn. Mom moved to turn off the burner, her movements deliberate and measured, buying herself precious seconds to process this bombshell. "Robert has been here every single day, caring for your father," Mom said slowly, each word carrying the weight of undeniable truth. "We're profoundly grateful for his dedication." Marcus smoothly redirected the conversation with the skill of someone accustomed to manipulating situations to his advantage. "Let's approach this practically, though. Two able-bodied adults could provide significantly more assistance than one person managing alone. Plus, we'd be contributing substantially to household expenses and medical costs." I sat there, fork suspended midway to my mouth, watching this elaborate performance unfold like a theater production I hadn't auditioned for. In the 11 months since I'd returned home, Catherine had graced us with exactly 7 visits, 4 of which lasted less than an hour. Her sudden concern for family welfare felt about as authentic as a $3 bill. The situation escalated with disturbing velocity over the following week. Catherine and Marcus began appearing unannounced with increasing frequency, always armed with some plausible excuse for wandering through different areas of the house. I discovered Marcus in Dad's study on 3 separate occasions, each time claiming he was simply searching for a pen or notepad. The third time, I found him positioned suspiciously close to Dad's filing cabinet, the one containing decades of financial documents and important papers. Their comments started subtly, but grew progressively bolder, like predators testing their prey's defenses. Must be quite liberating, living rent-free at your age, or don't you think it's time to establish your own independent life? Always delivered when our parents were safely out of earshot, always with that condescending smile that made my blood simmer. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday evening that will forever be seared into my memory. I was helping Dad with his evening physical therapy routine, those crucial exercises that were slowly but steadily rebuilding his strength and coordination. We developed a comfortable rhythm over the months, these sessions becoming as much about emotional connection as physical recovery. Catherine burst through the door with Marcus trailing behind her, their faces set with the kind of determination that preceded life-altering ultimatums. "We need to have a serious conversation," she declared, not bothering with pleasantries or asking if this was an appropriate time. "Mom and Dad are resting," I replied, hoping to defer this confrontation to a more suitable moment. I helped Dad settle into his favorite armchair, but before I could suggest we continue this discussion elsewhere, Marcus had positioned himself in the doorway like a bouncer blocking an exit. Catherine planted herself directly in front of me, arms crossed in a posture that screamed confrontation. "You need to stop fighting this inevitable change," she said, her voice carrying a coldness I'd never heard before. "You're nothing but a burden to this family." The words hit like physical blows. "Excuse me." Marcus joined the attack with voice dripping with contempt that seemed to come from somewhere deep and ugly. "Look at yourself, 32 years old, living with mommy and daddy like some kind of failure. Nobody wants you here anyway." I studied them both carefully, really looked at them for perhaps the first time in years. Catherine's designer outfit couldn't camouflage how exhausted she appeared, the kind of bone-deep weariness that comes from carrying secrets too heavy for one person. Marcus's usually immaculate appearance was showing cracks, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes holding a desperation I'd never witnessed before. "If you genuinely cared about this family's well-being," Catherine continued, her voice rising with each word, "you'd step aside and allow people who actually understand how to handle complex situations take control." I glanced toward Dad's chair, grateful beyond measure that he'd dozed off during our conversation. The last thing he needed was to hear his children tearing each other apart like rabid animals. Looking back now, I'm thankful he was spared witnessing what his family had become. I didn't argue or defend myself. Something about their desperation triggered alarm bells that had been quietly ringing in the back of my mind for weeks. Instead of engaging in their destructive game, I went upstairs and methodically packed a travel bag. I called a nearby extended stay hotel and secured a reservation for the following week. But before I walked out that door, I implemented 2 crucial safeguards that would prove to be game-changing decisions. First, I ordered a comprehensive home security system, small, discrete cameras designed for monitoring elderly family members. When I suggested to Mom that we install them for Dad's safety and peace of mind, the relief that flooded her eyes told me she'd been harboring similar concerns about our family dynamics. Second, I made several phone calls to Dad's bank and financial institutions, requesting they flag his accounts for any suspicious activity. Finding Marcus lurking near those financial documents had planted seeds of suspicion that I couldn't ignore. Call it paranoia if you want, but my instincts were screaming that something wasn't right. I moved out the following morning, and Catherine and Marcus could barely contain their triumph. But something felt fundamentally wrong about their victory. The way Marcus immediately began measuring windows in my former room, how Catherine started discussing renovations to Dad's study before I'd even loaded my car. I'm writing this from my hotel room, laptop open to the camera feeds that Catherine and Marcus have no idea exist. They believe I've surrendered, walked away defeated. They have no conception that I've simply repositioned my pieces on a chessboard they don't even realize they're playing on. Mom sent me a text message 2 hours ago that made my blood run cold. "Marcus was asking about your father's pension paperwork. Said he wanted to help organize the financial documents for easier management. I have a meeting scheduled with an elder law attorney first thing tomorrow morning." Sometimes the most effective way to protect the people you love is to allow others to believe they've already won. I thought leaving would feel like defeat, but watching Marcus rifle through Dad's personal documents right now through these camera feeds, I know I made exactly the right decision. They wanted my room so desperately. They can have it. But I have a strong suspicion they're about to discover why you should never underestimate the quiet one in any family. 24 hours have passed since my last entry, and I wish I could say I was simply being paranoid. The cameras I installed before departing have captured evidence that makes me physically ill. I spent the entire night reviewing footage from my sterile hotel room, trying to process the magnitude of what I was witnessing. Around 11:30 last evening, after our parents had retired for the night, Catherine and Marcus engaged in what they believed was a completely private conversation in my former bedroom. The audio quality isn't perfect, but their words came through with devastating clarity. "We don't have any other options left," Marcus was saying, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "The deadline is in 18 days. Catherine sat on my old bed, head buried in her hands in a gesture of complete despair. "I understand the urgency, but forging Dad's signature, Marcus, if we get caught, if anyone discovers what we're doing, if we don't take action immediately, we'll lose absolutely everything," he interrupted, his voice carrying the kind of desperation that comes from cornering. "The house isn't just being sold, Catherine. We're facing foreclosure. Do you want everyone in our social circle to know we're being evicted like common deadbeats?" My attention sharpened like a laser beam. They weren't selling their house at all. They were losing it. The conversation deteriorated from there. Marcus began detailing the investment opportunity that had gone catastrophically wrong, mentioning numbers that made my stomach clench with dread. These weren't small miscalculations. These were life-destroying financial disasters. "Your parents' house represents incredible equity," he continued, his voice taking on the tone of someone convincing himself as much as his audience. "If we can just secure approval for the refinancing application, we can access enough capital to cover our immediate obligations and nobody will ever know what happened. But Robert's going to notice discrepancies," Catherine protested weakly. "He's constantly monitoring their accounts, checking on their financial well-being. That's precisely why we needed him removed from the equation," Marcus replied with chilling calculation. "Look, I have all the paperwork prepared and ready for submission. We just need your father's signature on these documents. Once we have that, we can access sufficient funds to resolve our crisis and restore our financial stability." I watched my sister, the same person who used to sneak me cookies when Mom said no, who taught me how to ride a bicycle with infinite patience, nod slowly in agreement with this monstrous plan. "What about the retirement accounts?" she asked quietly. That's when I stopped the footage and immediately called the bank. Not our parents' local branch, but the Corporate Fraud Prevention Department. The representative who answered was incredibly helpful once I explained the situation developing in real time. It turns out someone had already attempted to submit a mortgage application using Dad's name. It had been automatically flagged because the signature didn't match their existing records. I spent the remainder of the night documenting everything I discovered, preparing for what I knew would be the most difficult conversation of my life. The following morning, I met with an elder law attorney whose expertise would prove invaluable. The meeting was simultaneously eye-opening and terrifying. What Marcus and Catherine were attempting wasn't just morally reprehensible, it constituted multiple federal crimes carrying serious prison sentences. The attorney helped me file for emergency guardianship proceedings and contacted the appropriate authorities. But the real bombshell emerged when I decided to conduct some independent research into Marcus's professional background. Public records can be fascinating when you know how to access them properly. There's a pending investigation against Marcus for financial misconduct, multiple complaints filed by former clients, and evidence that his company has been quietly pressuring people to remove negative online reviews. The man my sister married isn't just desperate, he's a career criminal. I needed to inform our parents about what was happening, but I wanted to approach this situation strategically rather than emotionally. Instead of confronting Catherine and Marcus directly, I waited until they left the house for another of their house hunting expeditions. Mom was in the kitchen when I arrived, patiently working with Dad on using his new adaptive utensils. The peaceful normalcy of the scene hit me like a physical blow. They had no idea their own daughter was planning to steal their life savings. "Robert." Mom looked surprised to see me. "I thought you were staying at the hotel for the foreseeable future." I sat down at our kitchen table, opened my laptop, and showed them the footage. Mom's face drained of all color as she heard Catherine and Marcus discussing their fraudulent plans. Dad's hands began trembling, not from his medical condition, but from pure, righteous anger. There's more, I said gently, producing the stack of documents the attorney had helped me prepare. Mom, do you remember those papers Catherine has been asking you to sign? The ones she said were for helping with medical bills? Mom's eyes widened with recognition. She rushed to retrieve her purse, pulling out a stack of documents that made my heart sink. Power of attorney forms, property transfer agreements, loan applications, all of them waiting for signatures that would have handed Catherine and Marcus complete control over our parents' financial future. I almost signed them yesterday, Mom whispered, her voice barely audible. Catherine said they were necessary for Dad's medical expenses and ongoing care. Dad managed to articulate what we were all thinking, his speech clearer than it had been in months. Stop them. I showed them the legal protective documents I'd prepared with the attorney, forms to safeguard their assets, revoke any previous powers of attorney, and alert their financial institutions to the attempted fraud. They signed everything immediately, their hands steady with resolve. As I'm writing this, I'm back at the family house. Catherine and Marcus are expected to return any moment, completely unaware that their mortgage application has been rejected, that we know about the cameras, that I've spent the day helping our parents secure every asset they own. The doorbell just rang. Mom has gone to answer it. It should be the attorney I hired, arriving right on schedule for our family meeting. We're having a comprehensive discussion in exactly 1 hour when Catherine and Marcus return, and everything is going to be laid bare. I can hear a car pulling into the driveway now. I've repositioned the living room camera to capture everything. Our parents are prepared, the attorney is here, and the evidence is overwhelming. Time to see how my sister explains attempting to steal our father's life savings. I have a strong feeling this isn't going to unfold the way Catherine and Marcus planned. I've been staring at my laptop screen for hours, trying to process how to document what transpired during that family meeting 4 days ago. The aftermath is still reverberating through all our lives, and I'm struggling to make sense of how completely everything unraveled. Let me begin with the moment Catherine and Marcus walked through our front door. They were laughing about something trivial, shopping bags dangling from their arms, projecting an image of people without a care in the world. That laughter died instantly when they noticed everyone assembled in our living room. Mom and Dad positioned on the couch, me settled in Dad's armchair, and a distinguished stranger in a business suit seated at our dining table with an imposing stack of legal documents. What's happening here? Catherine's voice wavered slightly, her eyes darting between all of us before settling on those papers. Marcus stepped forward with his characteristic smooth confidence, though I noticed a slight tension in his shoulders. Is everything all right? We weren't expecting any kind of family gathering. Sit down, Dad said, his speech demonstrating remarkable clarity and strength. Now, they sat, and I observed how Catherine's hand trembled as she set her shopping bags aside. Marcus loosened his collar, a nervous habit I'd never noticed before this moment. Mom spoke first, her voice steady but carrying an unmistakable undertone of sadness. We know about the mortgage application, Catherine. The one with your father's forged signature. The color drained from Marcus's face as if someone had opened a valve. Catherine started to speak, but he cut her off with desperate urgency. There must be some kind of mistake here. We can explain everything. I opened my laptop and played the video footage of their late-night conversation, their own voices, their own confessions about the fraud, the desperation, the calculated manipulation. The room filled with the sound of their conspiracy, each word a nail in the coffin of their denial. You recorded us? Catherine whispered, her face displaying a mixture of shock and betrayal that would have been laughable if the situation weren't so devastating. After discovering Marcus going through Dad's financial documents multiple times, yes, I recorded everything, I replied calmly. That's when the dam burst completely. Marcus jumped to his feet, pointing at me with accusations flying. You had no right to do this. This is invasion of privacy. We could sue you for this. Sit down. The attorney's voice cut through Marcus's outburst like a blade through paper. Before we discuss the multiple federal crimes you've attempted to commit, let's review your current legal situation. He began methodically laying out documents across our table, evidence of the pending investigation against Marcus, complaints from defrauded clients, documentation of the attempted identity theft. With each new paper, Marcus seemed to physically diminish, shrinking into the couch cushions. Then came the revelation that stopped everyone cold. The attorney had discovered that Marcus had already opened 5 credit cards using Dad's personal information. He'd been using them for months, racking up charges that totaled over $37,000. Catherine's face crumpled as the full scope of the betrayal became clear. Marcus, you promised we were just going to borrow against the house equity. You never mentioned anything about credit cards. What was I supposed to do? He snapped, all pretense of civility evaporating. After the investment scheme collapsed, everyone wanted their money back immediately. Your constant shopping sprees weren't exactly helping our financial situation either. My shopping. Catherine's voice rose to a near shriek. What about the gambling websites showing up on our credit card statements? What about the poker games you thought I didn't know about? It was like watching a carefully constructed dam collapse in real time. Every secret, every lie they'd been maintaining came pouring out in a torrent of mutual accusations. The house they were supposedly selling was actually in foreclosure. Marcus's investment company was under federal investigation for systematically mismanaging client funds. Catherine had been hiding their mounting debts from everyone, including our parents, out of shame and denial. Dad sat through this entire spectacle, his face growing sterner with each revelation. When the shouting finally subsided, he spoke with slow, deliberate precision. You tried to steal from us. Daddy, no. Catherine protested through streaming tears. We were desperate. We were going to pay everything back. With what money? Mom's question hung in the air like an indictment. Nobody had an answer. The attorney cleared his throat professionally. Here's what's going to happen. First, your parents have signed documents revoking any power of attorney and adding comprehensive fraud alerts to all their accounts. Second, the credit card companies have been notified of the identity theft. Third, he looked directly at Marcus. The authorities have been informed of your attempts to defraud your in-laws. Marcus stood up so quickly he knocked over a side table lamp. You can't prove anything definitively. Ivy, tell them we were just trying to help the family. But Catherine wasn't looking at him anymore. She was staring at the floor, shoulders shaking with the weight of everything that had been exposed. How much did you steal from your clients? She asked quietly. The question seemed to deflate him completely. I can fix this situation. I just need more time to make things right. Time's up, the attorney said simply, nodding toward our front window. 2 police cars had pulled up outside our house. What followed felt like something from a surreal nightmare. Marcus was escorted out in handcuffs, ranting about betrayal and conspiracy, while neighbors watched from their windows. Catherine remained on our couch, mascara streaking down her face, looking utterly lost and broken. Mom retreated to the kitchen and began stress baking with manic intensity, her way of processing trauma. Dad wheeled himself to his study, saying he needed solitude to think through everything that had happened. I found Catherine in my former room several hours later, after the police had departed and the house had settled into an uneasy quiet. She was sitting on my old bed, holding a photograph of us as children, back when the world seemed simpler and our family felt unbreakable. I didn't know about the credit cards, she whispered without looking up. I knew we were in serious financial trouble, but I didn't realize how far he'd fallen. He kept saying he could fix everything if we just had access to Dad's equity. I wanted to believe him desperately. Why didn't you come to us for help? I asked, sitting beside her on the bed that had been mine for so many years. She looked up, her face torn between shame and relief. Because admitting that everything was falling apart meant acknowledging that I'd failed. That my perfect life, my perfect marriage, was all built on lies and debt. The police contacted us this morning with updates. They'd found evidence on Marcus's personal laptop of extensive financial fraud reaching far beyond our family. He wasn't just stealing from relatives. His entire business model was constructed on deception and theft. Catherine is meeting with a divorce attorney this afternoon. I moved back home today, and my room still carries the faint scent of her perfume, but the shopping bags are gone forever. Mom has baked enough cookies to feed a small army, her way of processing the trauma. Dad has been quieter than usual, but he squeezed my hand when I sat beside him for our evening television routine. There's a family counseling session scheduled for next week. Catherine has agreed to participate, which feels like the first step toward healing. The attorney says there's still considerable legal complexity to navigate, but at least the immediate threat to her parents' financial security has been eliminated. Sometimes doing the right thing feels absolutely terrible in the moment, but watching mom sleep peacefully tonight, knowing their retirement savings are protected, makes every difficult decision worthwhile. As for Catherine, that's a much longer road toward redemption and healing that stretches out ahead of us. 6 months have passed, and they say revenge is a dish best served cold. Well, I've been working in the kitchen for half a year, and dinner is finally ready to be served. Remember Marcus, who attempted to steal my parents' life savings and called me a burden to my own family? He's currently sharing a prison cell with someone who doesn't appreciate his financial expertise. But that's merely the appetizer in this feast of justice. Let me bring you up to date on how everything has unfolded since my last update. I didn't simply step back and allow the justice system to handle everything. I became methodical, systematic, and absolutely relentless. Remember those security cameras I installed? They captured far more than just conversations about fraud. They recorded every phone call Marcus made from our house, every document he accessed using our Wi-Fi network, every email he checked while staying in our home. I hired a forensic digital investigator to analyze everything comprehensively. What we discovered was that Marcus wasn't just stealing from family and individual clients. He was operating an entire network of fraudulent schemes. The investigation revealed offshore bank accounts, shell companies, and a trail of victims spanning several years. Each new discovery felt like unwrapping a gift, but here's where the story becomes truly satisfying. Remember how Catherine was always flaunting their perfect lifestyle on social media? Designer clothing, expensive vacations, that house they were so proud of, all purchased with stolen money. Thanks to something called proceeds of crime legislation, everything had to be sold to compensate their victims. Catherine's facing her own legal consequences now. During the divorce proceedings, evidence emerged that she knew far more than she initially claimed. Those shopping sprees funded by stolen client money, the vacations paid for with elderly victims' retirement accounts, her perfect social media life collapsed spectacularly when everything became public knowledge. But here's the most satisfying part of this entire saga. I found Marcus's hidden laptop computer in our attic last month. He'd concealed it there during the chaos of their attempted takeover. The files on that device were encrypted, but I know people who specialize in digital forensics. What we discovered was better than Christmas morning. Hundreds of emails where Marcus bragged to friends about manipulating my sister, detailing his plans to drain my parents' accounts, describing our family as easy targets for his schemes. He even maintained a spreadsheet calculating how much he could steal before anyone would notice the discrepancies. I sent copies of everything to everyone he'd ever bragged to, his family members, his friends, his old college fraternity brothers, every country club member he'd boasted to about his self-made success. The responses were deeply satisfying, but I saved the real fireworks for the finale. Remember those clients he defrauded? I tracked down every single one of them. I made sure they had copies of all the evidence, documentation of his prison sentence, and details about his current circumstances. Some of them were elderly couples who lost their entire retirement savings. Others were small business owners who trusted him with their company's future. They formed a support group, and they're pursuing lawsuits not just against Marcus, but against his entire extended family who benefited from the stolen money. His parents, who lived in that vacation house he purchased with fraudulent funds, are losing it. His brother, whose startup company received investments from Marcus's schemes, is watching his business dissolve in bankruptcy court. Catherine attempted to play the victim card during legal proceedings, but those shopping receipts told a different story entirely. The bankruptcy court was particularly interested in her designer handbag collection, especially when they learned it was purchased with money stolen from retirees' pension funds. She's working retail now at a discount clothing store, the same shopping center where she used to spend thousands of dollars on single shopping trips. Last week, Marcus's former cellmate started sharing stories on prison social media platforms about Marcus's daily life behind bars. Apparently, he cries himself to sleep every night. His tough guy act lasted approximately 2 days before reality crushed his spirit completely. Mom is thriving now. She's actually smiling again, genuinely laughing during our family dinners. Dad's speech therapy is showing remarkable progress. It turns out that stress was significantly hampering his recovery process. They're planning a vacation next month, their first in several years. I made absolutely certain it's funded with completely legitimate money, unlike certain people's previous travel plans. The Karma Express wasn't finished with its deliveries, though. Last month, a documentary filmmaker contacted me. They're producing a series about financial fraudsters, and Marcus's case is going to be the featured episode of their first season. I provided them with everything: the recordings, the emails, all the evidence of his elaborate criminal enterprise. His face is going to be famous, just not in the way he always envisioned for himself. Catherine called yesterday asking to meet, claiming she has things she wants to explain or justify. I agreed, but we're meeting at the courthouse cafe. The location seemed appropriately symbolic. I've got a digital recorder ready, just in case she attempts to spin more lies or revised versions of the truth. Marcus has got 15 years to contemplate his choices. His appeals were denied last week, and his former clients are ensuring his story gets shared in every financial forum, every investment group, every place where he might try to restart his schemes after his eventual release. Sometimes I sit in my old room, the one they desperately tried to take from me, and read letters from Marcus's victims thanking me for exposing his crimes. Each one feels like vindication and validation. The quiet one in the family turned out to be anything but quiet when it mattered most. They wanted to destroy my family out of pure greed. Instead, they destroyed themselves, and I had front row seats to watch their entire world collapse, one perfectly legal, methodically planned step at a time. Dad said something profound yesterday, his speech clearer than it's been since his stroke. Sometimes the best revenge isn't what you do to them. It's ensuring they have to live with the consequences of what they did to themselves. I'm meeting Catherine in 2 hours. The recorder is fully charged, and I have copies of every document demonstrating her involvement in the conspiracy. Time to serve the final course of this very cold, very satisfying dish of justice. This concludes my story. Some tales end with forgiveness and reconciliation. This one ends with justice served and family protected.